Hi, my name's Tanya Raby, and welcome to the first episode of Dogs Who Sail TV. In this episode, I'm joined by a very special guest, Sheridan Lathe. Sheridan is from Vets Tails Sailing Chuffed, and she's going to be talking with me about toileting your dog on a boat. We've really covered a lot of ground in this interview, but if at the end you still find that you have questions or concerns, please pop those into the comments below and I'll be keeping a close eye on the feed and get back to you with a response so that we can alleviate or ease some of those concerns that you do have about toileting your dog on a boat. So without further ado, let's jump in. I want you to hear more about what Sheridan has to say than me rambling on. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope that these episodes are of great benefit to you and you get to enjoy your boating life with your dog so much more. Thanks for being here.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day now. Set aside your worries, it's okay now. The sun is here to stay. Blue skies, feel the wind beneath you as you fly by. Dancing on a cloud that lifts you high, high, high. Your troubles blow away. And oh yeah, everything you want's right here. And oh yeah, the music's never been so clear. It goes na 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 na.
Welcome aboard Dogs Who Sail. Today we have a special guest with us. Her name is Sheridan Lathe and she's a vet who's sailing around on her boat, Sailing Chuffed. Is that right, Sheridan?
Yeah, Sailing Chuffed. A good Aussie name.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. I'm excited to collaborate and help the Dogs Who Sail community.
Great, thank you. So I think before we get started, I'm sure our members, our Dogs Who Sail members would love to hear more about what you're doing out there on Sailing Chuffed, if you'd like to give us a bit of a breakdown.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So as you said, Tanya, my SB Chuffed is my sailboat. So it's a little floating home, but I've also got a little portable veterinary clinic on board. So we've got medicines and surgical tools so that as we travel, we're able to help animals in need. So far, I've been up the coast of Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico. So currently in Mexico doing a big haul out renovation, which has been fun. But it's been really good too because we've been doing a lot of work with the local street dogs, and we've also set up a low-cost spay and neuter program in the town that we've hauled out in, which has been really good being here a bit longer. But basically our main goal with Vets Tails Sailing Chuffed is that we not only get to help like individual dogs and cats and wildlife, but we're also trying to help set up and educate the local veterinarians and the local community and animal workers so that once we leave, the good work we're trying to do can continue. So here in Puerto Madero, where we've got the boat hauled out in Mexico, we've basically set up the local veterinarian with a state veterinarian who does spay and neuter campaigns. And so now we've hosted the first one, and now they're able to actually continue doing them once we go so that it becomes a regular thing in the town. So that's kind of what our aim is and what our goals are.
Wow, fantastic. So you're getting to live the dream and in what you love doing, and it's fantastic. I
Yeah,
think
it's really nice.
I'm just thinking maybe we'll get you on and just dedicate an episode to some of the amazing work that you're doing and hear some of the stories. I think everybody would love
Yeah, there's, especially with the wildlife, there's some crazy things have happened. Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely do that at some
Cool.
point. But I guess we'll kick off today. So today's topic is something that's discussed. Probably it's the biggest concern in the boating community for dog owners, and it's
Yeah.
about toileting your dog on board. So there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions come up around this topic. So I'm just going to remind our listeners who have tuned in today. Sheridan and I will. It's just a discussion with you. It's general advice. So if at any point, you do see symptoms with your dog and need, I guess, further instruction, book a consultation with your vet. Would you like to add anything, Shetty?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Just remembering that not all advice suits every dog at every age of life and different conditions. So it's always a good idea. I even suggest to people if they're about to embark on a journey with their dogs, it's never a bad idea to just pop into the vet for a general checkup either, just to make sure that everything you're thinking of doing will work for your individual doggy.
Yeah, great advice. So I guess we'll just jump in. Let's begin. So the biggest
Yeah.
worry, I'll start with my own dogs, Maxie and Mel,
Yeah.
who were two Cocker Spaniels who sailed with us. So I was always concerned that, when we're on land, they can come and go as they please in a house when they want to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
But when we were on the boat, they're obviously waiting for us to take them up to their designated area. Now, the question that always bothered me most was how long is too long for your dog to hold on for both wheeze and poos? We'll just be blunt here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so for wheeze, in theory, like the average dog can go up to 10 hours without weaning, but it's actually the same for the average human adult as well. But I know for me personally, although that in theory is a possibility, the reality is I wouldn't be very comfortable and it might not work out so good for me to actually try and do that. So it's just 10 hours is possible, but probably not how long they should go. Puppies, just like young children, or very old dogs, just like older people, tend to need to go more frequently. So that might actually be only 2 to 4 hours, depending on the dog. Yeah. And also the smaller the dog, generally their bladder's also smaller, so they tend to need to wee a little bit more frequently. But as a general kind of good rule of thumb, allowing the opportunity to go to the toilet every 6 hours to wee is a good idea. That's kind of a good amount of time. They're not going to be too uncomfortable. In terms of going number 2, dogs can go 1 or 2 days without going, but just like in us, if they feel the urge that they need to go and they're ready to go, it's better for them to have the opportunity rather than holding on, up to 24 or 48 hours, even though they can. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it makes sense. I don't like to hold on if I don't have to. So leading on from that, I was always concerned that if they did hold on for too long, that they might develop like some bowel or kidney problems, or maybe a urinary tract infection or something. Is this a possibility? And are there signs that we can kind of look out for these things?
Yeah. So in terms of, with urinating, the main problem, just like us, is, like I already said, they might get uncomfortable, might be the first thing you notice. So if the dog's kind of walking around, restless, sniffing a lot, that might be a sign they need to go and they're starting to feel a little uncomfortable and want to go. Yeah. The other thing with dogs too to be aware of is most dogs, if they've not grown up on a boat, have been trained not to go to the toilet on furniture, on, you know, on the deck, on floor. So in their mind, it can be actually quite stressful for them as well, where they need to go, there's no opportunity, and they can actually develop an anxiety with it. So that's, I guess, a mental condition that can develop as well, to just be aware of. In terms of more serious medical complications from holding wheeze too long, the first thing is that it does increase the risk of urinary tract infections. And the reason for that is the bacteria that's normally in the bladder is just sitting there for a much longer period of time. So it can multiply and multiply and multiply, and then overwhelm the body's natural defense system. The same thing can also make it more likely for kidney or bladder stones to form, because there's always a little bit of minerals and sediment in the urine, and that gets flushed out normally every few hours. But if it's sitting for a really long time, it can develop into little crystals or stones. And the bladder can also stretch and bruise. So that's kind of the main things around urinating.
Yeah.
In terms of not pooping, the main issue is constipation. So if the dog needs to go and there's a piece of poo sitting there ready to go, and then they don't go, the water actually starts to get reabsorbed from the poo, and then it gets really, really hard, and then it's harder for them to actually pass it later. So sometimes to the point, if a dog doesn't go for 24 or 48 hours when they needed to, they actually sometimes have to get enemas and things to get it all going again. So that's the main side effects we might see if they were to hold on for too long.
Yeah. So it's pretty much like humans, really, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So will they eventually go? Like, what goes in, this is my thinking, is what goes in must come out. Is that the case?
Yeah, so definitely at some point, like with a person, they'll eventually wet themselves. The bladder only has so much muscle control before eventually it just cannot hang on anymore. But there's two problems with that theory. One is that obviously the bladder might have stretched, or, you know, we could have developed these other problems in that waiting period. But the other thing is if the dog wets themselves, it's usually a sign that they thought they weren't allowed to go. They were scared to go because they thought they weren't allowed. Then they wet themselves, and then they think, wow, now I've really messed up, and they can feel kind of a shame and anxiety about that. And so you then can actually have a harder time training them in the future, because they think they've done something wrong. Even if you don't get upset with them, if they have a memory from, you know, puppyhood of going at the wrong time, they might still have that. And then, as I said too, with not pooing, that dogs can hold that quite well for a really long time, and that then can lead to constipation. So in theory, it will eventually happen, but we might end up with kind of some unforeseen problems before that kind of thing.
Yeah. So when they've been holding on for a long time, and I guess some of the symptoms or things that we're going to really notice with them, just a bit of an elaboration on those things, what we can look out for.
Yeah, definitely. So usually, I guess the first sign is that they're not comfortable. So if their bladder's really full, or they feel like they need to go poo, they're going to start walking around. They might they might stand up, then sit down, and then stand up, and then sit down, walk around, sit down, kind of acting like they're looking for somewhere, and then they decide, oh no, I won't, and then come and sit back down. The other thing that some dogs will do is like start stretching. So when they do that kind of downward dog thing, that's actually them stretching their belly out, and that can sometimes be a sign they're feeling a bit uncomfortable in the abdomen.
Yeah.
If they have held on too long, and then they have developed a urinary tract infection, say it was like a rough day out there, and there was just not an opportunity for them to go, and you're worried that maybe something could have happened from that. The most common symptom from either stones, crystals, or a urinary tract infection is that the urinary tract gets irritated. So normally what we see is that they stop and try to wee really frequently. So they might do a little wee, and then 10 minutes later they do another little wee, and then 10 minutes later they do another one. Obviously, if you see them squat to go to the toilet and nothing is coming out, that can be a sign of a more serious blockage or problem. So that's always an emergency.
Yeah.
And as we said with the constipation, similar thing where if you see them trying to go and nothing's coming out, that might mean that they've got become constipated. Dogs can actually take over-the-counter laxatives like the Senna. Senna's a natural laxative that people can take, and dogs can also take it. But it's usually better to just kind of give your vet a quick call if you're going to do something like that, just to check that it's not going to interfere, certain medications, or if your dog has any other issues. And they really have to be well hydrated is the most important thing with constipation, because that's really how things get going again. So.
Okay, wow. Yeah, well, I guess that leads on to kind of my next question. So, have you got any feeding and hydration advice leading up to longer legs? Or if people can't get to land for a longer period of time?
Yeah, so just like with us, dogs can survive, 1 or 2 or even 3 days without drinking. However, it's just like us, that's in an emergency survival situation, not necessarily what you should be doing to be a healthy person on a boat. So because we do have the choice of putting our dog in the situation, we have to, recognize that we can't go off survival and emergency numbers. We have to go off what the dogs need day to day.
Yeah.
So generally offering them water every 2 hours is a good idea. If it's just a day trip, you definitely can consider just offering them smaller amounts of water so that they don't need to weigh as much as they might have had they been at home.
Yeah.
But just like in us, you've just got to be smart in those situations where if it's a 35-degree day and the sun's beating down and you're just drinking water bottle after water bottle, your dog's going to be feeling much the same, where they need to drink a bit more water than normal as well. A kind of rough guide is for a 10-kilogram dog, they need to drink about half a litre of water a day. And so basically half a litre per 10 kilos of dog is a rough idea.
Wow, okay.
And a good way to do it if you are kind of trying to minimize the need to go to the toilet is offering them, fresh water before a trip, let it take them out to wee, going out for the day and offering smaller amounts. And then when you get home, they have free access to water again. It's a really good idea for dogs to have free access to water at least twice a day so that they can kind of drink what they need to get the hydration back up if they haven't drank as much during, other periods.
Yeah.
Food is a little easier for adult dogs, provided they don't have any medical problems. Food can quite safely be withheld for 24 hours.
Okay.
The main thing to know, though, is that just because you don't feed your dog breakfast in the morning doesn't mean they're not going to need to poo, because that might have come from the day before, or breakfast the day before,
Good
So
point.
it won't always guarantee, but for things like seasickness especially, not feeding them for kind of 6 hours before the trip can help reduce them feeling nauseous and things like that.
Right.
But for the most part, as much as you can keep it like their day-to-day normal food and water access, the better chance that their body routine stays normal. And then you might actually get to a point that you can kind of predict, when my dog usually goes to the toilet in the morning, so I can try and, time that a little bit. So.
Yeah. So it's not advisable to just withhold, especially water,
Yeah.
to stop your dog from going to the toilet on these longer legs.
Yeah, definitely. Dehydration is, like I said, just like us, you can survive for some period of time without water, but on a hot day, like what we sometimes get, in Australia, or even, if you're sailing in the Caribbean or tropical places where it gets really, really hot, going a few hours without water really can dehydrate you pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's right. So and with the seasickness as well, I'd love for us to have in the future a more in-depth conversation about seasickness, which
Yeah, definitely.
we'll do. But yeah, in a future episode, we will be looking at how to train the dogs to go to the toilet on the boat.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, like to help, before that episode, to help listeners, do you have any tips or advice about training your dog to go to the toilet on the
Yeah,
boat?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I'll let the trainers talk about the ins and outs of the 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 actual training part, but
Yeah.
um, probably my advice would be to be patient with the dog, because like I said, for them, doing things like forcing them to hold on, eventually they'll go, I just, like I'll just put her out there, she'll eventually wee, not letting them have water, things like that, or taking them out in weather when you can tell they're clearly scared. You can actually just inadvertently reinforce their fear and anxiety about going on the boat, and then make it actually more difficult to ever get them trained. And so that's just something to, in the short term, while you're starting the training, having a backup plan where if it's, the weather's not the way your dog normally can handle it, or if they maybe didn't have a good day on the boat the last time, having like a dog sitter option is never a bad idea in the beginning. And like I said, being patient and kind to them in the situation, because it's obviously, especially for a middle-aged or older doggy that's never been on a boat, it's a pretty unknown situation for them.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned to me about how some dogs will start going and then all of a sudden they stop.
That's right.
And that is something that can happen, and usually it's actually an unintentional training. So say, for example, you've got your little, a little fake grass mat at the front of the boat, and the dog's been using it for a few months and it's all good. And then one day they go up there, you hit a wave and they nearly fall and you don't even see it. Maybe it was so quick, but in the dog's mind, that can actually be a bigger deal. And that might be enough for them to think, oh, I'm not allowed to do this anymore. Or, there's a loud bang when they go and then they think, oh, I'm getting in trouble for this now. I knew I wasn't meant to do this. So sometimes it can be really something that's kind of simple and seems a bit silly to us, but in the dog's mind, they can't see it that way and they think something's gone wrong. So, just kind of knowing that setbacks do happen sometimes and being patient with them, doing some retraining is really kind of, what you've got to do. Patience is key. So,
I couldn't agree with you more. And I often think about the poor dog. Like usually the common scenario is we've been on land, we've been landlubbers, and we've taught the dog to go outside to go to the toilet. And then all of a sudden we're saying, okay, this is your new home now. Go to the toilet here.
Yeah, exactly. It's an adjustment for us as well, and we know what's going on. So the poor dogs, it's even more so.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really great. And there have been a number of people who have brought up the issue with me that the dog has stopped going. I know with Maxie and Mel was quite sensitive, and sometimes she'd go, sometimes she wouldn't, and there was no rhyme or reason that I could work out what was going on. So it was just being patient with her and noticing what she needed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So look, I think we've covered quite a lot in this episode, and I think the main questions about toileting we've really answered. Can you think of anything else that you'd like to add, Shedi, to the conversation?
Yeah, I think what you said about just being aware of your individual dogs. If they're more sensitive, some dogs just take longer. And I think also just remembering, like, if you're not feeling comfortable in a situation, or you think maybe a child wouldn't feel comfortable in a situation, then your dog probably doesn't either. And so it's always a good idea to, in these situations, especially if it's getting a bit frustrating, to kind of look at it from the doggy perspective a little bit of how you might feel in your dog's shoes, if someone said to you, okay, now we're going to start going in this bucket and that's where we go to the toilet, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't really love that idea. So it's kind of the same thing.
So doggy
yeah, just kind of
everybody.
Exactly, doggy empathy. Yeah.
No, that's really great, and look, I'm so thankful that you've given us this time today to talk about such a, like I said at the very beginning, a topic that causes a lot of owners anxiety and worry. So so I think we could probably wrap it up here. And look, I'd love to encourage everybody to pop on and have a look at what Sheridan is up to. I'll pop a link down below to Sheridan's Facebook page. Is that the best place for people to follow what you're up to?
Yeah, the Facebook page, I update it when we've got new videos out and about our patients and things like that. So
yeah, great. So I'll pop those details below, and also there's a blog post on our Dogs Who Sail site as well, our Dogs Who Sail website, which you can go to and have a read about PMATs and different things. But in an upcoming episode, we'll get a trainer on to elaborate on training your dog on board. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments section below, and I'll just keep communicating with Sheridan, and we'll get back to you with any of anything that you need further answers on. Sorry. And I think that just about does it today. But Sheridan, thank you. I know that everybody will be so grateful for your contribution today.
I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to keep exploring the world of dogs on boats.
Great. Well, thank you, and look forward to chatting in future episodes.
Yeah, me too. Stay chuffed until next time.
Thanks, Sheridan.
Here and oh yeah, the music's now.